Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to show you today how to start making the back of your mirror frame, frame your mirror. So I'm going to show you how to add on this little bit and how to keep this outside piece from getting too warped when you bake it. Okay, so first off, what I want to start with is you can use your scrap clay for this because really, who's going to look at the back of your mirror? Nobody's going to look at the back of your mirror. So if you have some scrap clay, you do want to condition it. Now, like this clay right here, since it's been sitting on the paper and it got a bunch of the stuff, the oil sucked out of it, it's actually having a little bit of a hard time conditioning. It's a little bit crumbly. So what you can do is if you happen to have, you can keep conditioning it like regular, but if you happen to have some baby oil, I just put a little bit of baby oil in this little bowl that I made, and I'm just taking just like a drop, and I'm gonna start adding that in, and that'll help condition it a little bit better. It'll start sticking together instead of just crumbling. Now, depending on how dry or like how non-oily your clay is, it might take a little bit more than a drop, but for the most part, you want to start really, really small if you add baby oil to it, because if you add too much, then it gets really sticky, and then you have to set it on a piece of paper to suck out the extra oil. So you really just want to make sure that you're using just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit. So, okay, so my clay is feeling fairly conditioned now, like it's starting to not be crummy anymore. Now for doing the mirror, for this part, I'm just gonna start with a coil. So I'm gonna roll out a long coil. I'm gonna scoot that out of the way so I have more space so I can roll it a little bit easier. Because the back of this, I really don't need that much width, right? So I can make a fairly skinny coil and make that go all the way around or close to all the way around. So here's my little coil. So now you'll notice, like when I take the mirror out, you can see that just like in the other video, like we cut the hole a little bit smaller than what the mirror is. So when we glue this later, the mirror's not going to fall out. But I also added on this little piece right here that's just slightly larger than the mirror, but we want it to be about the same thickness as the mirror, right? Now, my edge is fairly small, so I could maybe get away with just leaving it like this, but I'm going to add just a little bit more of this border so you can see how I did this one, and so you can see how, especially if you're going to do lots of heavier decorations on the other side, how you can support it really well. Okay. So now I do, like I said, I want this coil to end up the thickness of the mirror. And normally we have, actually I'm going to go this way. Normally we have two sticks on either side, right? But since I want it to be the thickness of the mirror and the mirror's kind of wide, if I set most of my pencil on the mirror, then I can use the mirror to choose my thickness. And remember, just like before when we were rolling out the coils, rolling out an easy coil, we don't want to start off with a lot of pressure on this. If I just go and like try to do it, a lot of times it'll, depending on the size of your coil, it'll flip back over and it'll get all funky and it's just difficult. So I'm just doing it a little bit. Oh, see, like that. It's because this part is such a difference. So really, I just want to do just a little bit. Just a little bit. So I start off with just a little bit. And then once I have a little bit, then I can go a little bit more, right? And usually I most of the time want to roll away from myself and not roll towards myself. So now, this is getting pretty long. So this one coil should be able to go all the way around my frame, but you don't have to make yours in one coil. You can have more than, like if you need another coil, not a big deal, just make another coil. But we just want it to be fairly small. Like it doesn't need to be super wide. So like mine's only going to end up being about the thickness of the pencil, and that is totally fine, right? It doesn't have to be super crazy wide. Oops. And if you get any clay on your mirror or on your pencil, that's okay. Just clean it off with a paper towel. Okay, so I'm almost there. Remember, keep most of your pencil on the mirror side when you do this, so that way it's going to end up the thickness of the mirror, and it won't, you know, wobble if you're holding mostly on this side. Okay, so now that I've got that all flat, I'm going to bring this back over, and I'm going to have my slicer. And remember, the slicer is super sharp, so you can use the slicer, or if you would rather, you can use your needle tool for this one. I just have gotten used to using the slicer. But if you do use the slicer, remember to clean it. Remember, it's very sharp. It's a knife. So when you clean it, you're going to take your paper towel, fold it over, and keep your thumbs behind, like your thumb and your finger, keep it behind the main part of the blade and just pull across, right? And I'm on the back side, which is not as sharp as the front side. And I'm just pulling it across, and that cleans it off real good. Okay. So now I'm going to make it, so when I created this one, I just stuck it like right there, right? But so I'm just going to take my coil, I'm going to set it on here. Now, if I add this on all the way, it's going to leave just a tiny bit of a gap, and that's totally fine. And I'm just going to trim this so it's a little bit flat. And then I'm going to trim on this side. Now, like I said before, it doesn't, since this is just the back side, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like this one's a little short. And then I have these extra pieces that I've made previously, but I did it exactly the same way. So I'm just going to trim a little bit off there. Now, depending on how much clay you have left, like this is all the clay you're going to get for the year. So if you don't have a lot of clay left, then instead of making it go all the way around, do the two long sides and just have like a small extra piece on the short side like that, and that'll be just fine. So when you go to add these on though, because you're just taking a flat piece and sticking it to another flat piece and you're not really blending it at all, that's where our glue comes in. You want to use the glue for this. So when you use the glue, you just need a little teeny bit. So what I'm going to do is just add on, like I'm going to take one little bloop right there, and I'm just going to kind of spread it across. Now it doesn't have to be exactly all the way to the edge, because this one we're just trying to make sure that it stays stuck. And it, like I said, it's the back, so I just have a little teeny bit because we don't want it to squeeze out all over the place and make a giant mess, because this is different from Elmer's glue. It looks like Elmer's glue, but it's different from Elmer's glue because it's not going to get hard until it's baked. So you could let it sit on here for, 3 years, and it's not gonna be permanent until it's baked, right? So it's important that once you add some of this glue on, that you bake it. Okay. Oh, there is a bug in my... There, I got it. Ha ha ha. I know, I'm very excited. Okay, so we're gonna use this glue a lot because one of our later projects, and this project too, we're gonna bake in between some of the steps just to make it easier for it to not get all funky and misshapen. So like I said, we're just using a little bit of the glue, but this glue is not gonna stick permanently until we have baked it, okay? So that's really important to know. All right, so once you have it on here and you've glued it, you can kind of roll it just a little bit just to make sure that it's nice and stuck down. And make sure if they move around a little bit that you just kind of shove them back into place. But make sure it's nice and kind of even. So at this point, now that I have the front and I have the little frame, and I did the frame the same way, I just filled in all that, you know, area, but it's exactly the same as this outside bit. But now that I have the main part and I have this inner part that, you know, matches up with the mirror, and I have the outer part that's going to support the outside, now I want to go bake this. Okay, so follow the directions from the other video on how to bake it. If you made this the thicknesses that I told you, then it'll only take the 15 minutes at 275 degrees. But do make sure when I bake this one, I'm going to bake it upside down like this for now, because I really want, if it bends at all, I really want it to bend flat. Okay, so that's where we're at, and I'll see you in the next video for how to decorate the other side. Thanks, everybody.